I'm Vito LaBella, and I'm running for state senate in the 26th district. Today, I'd like to talk to you about something you've probably heard a lot about: defund the police. You know, even Andrew Cuomo said it was one of the stupidest things he's ever heard, and he ain't wrong. But defund the police is way too simplistic. In 2019 and up until 2023, when the working family parties and the Democratic Socialists of America took over Albany, they decided to pass a whole host of laws that went about not just defunding the police, because that implies just taking away money, and the solution to that would be easy: just put the money back. But what they did is they decided that they wanted to dismantle the criminal justice system. Think of the criminal justice system like a Jenga tower. Each policy change from the NYPD, each procedural shift from the district attorney's office, each law that's pro-criminal and anti-cop, well, you remove all of these blocks, then the Jenga tower, that is the criminal justice system, becomes unstable. And if you remove enough of these blocks, if you change enough of these policies, what you'll find is that the criminal justice system will collapse. And that's pretty much what's happened, because what happened after they put in all of these policy changes, all of these new criminal justice reform laws, was that crime started to go up and New Yorkers became less safe. So I've spent the last week compiling all of the different changes since 2020, changes in the penal law, the criminal procedure law, district attorney's procedures, NYPD policy. And I came up with this 20-page document that if I were to try to go through them point by point, it would be like the world's most boring TED Talk. So I'm going to refrain from doing that, and I'm just going to talk about a couple of different issues that you've heard about, such as bail reform. Now, the impetus for the bail reform was a kid who was arrested for stealing a backpack. And he wound up spending 2 years at Rikers. And even though that the charges were eventually dropped and he was released, the experience so devastated, so impacted him that he ended up committing suicide. And that's one of the cases that they quoted and they talked about when they tried to put forth bail reform in 2019. And I spoke to Latrice Walker, who was one of the co-sponsors, and she said that wasn't an isolated case. She said that she had another kid who was in jail. He was on jail on some minor offense, and he had bail of $100 or $1,000, minimal bail. But the reason that he couldn't make it was because his mother didn't have subway fare to go down to central booking to get him out. Now, I think fair-minded people will agree that how much money you have shouldn't really determine whether or not you have your freedom while waiting for your trial. So when the bail reform law went into effect, it meant that people arrested for most misdemeanors and nonviolent felonies were sent home and told to come back to trial at a later date. Well, the result was this revolving door where people kept on getting arrested for the same thing, going out and committing crime after crime after crime, including some crimes that were violent in nature while they were out awaiting trial. So there was an outcry, and they tried to tweak it in 2022, but they didn't do a couple of things that would really address the public safety issue. And let me tell you what they are. So, my opponent, Andrew Gennardis, loves to say that, every other state in the nation does this, or every other state in the nation does that, when it's something that he likes. Well, every other state in the United States allows a judge to consider dangerousness when determining pretrial detention. And Andrew Gennardis and the rest of the Working Family Party senators up there in Albany don't want to let us do that here. What's another thing that we can do? Well, there's something called a risk assessment tool. And that's a metric, that algorithm actually, where you plug in all of the different factors and you come out with a non-biased determination about whether someone should be eligible for bail or not. Another thing you might have heard about is discovery reform. Discovery refers to the things, the items that assistant district attorneys have to give to defense attorneys. And what the law did is they put so much onerous onerous regulations on district attorneys as far as the amount of material they have to turn over, the timeliness of the material they have to turn over, that, believe it or not, 50% of all drunk driving arrests in New York City end up getting dismissed because the district attorneys just can't get the information to the defense attorneys in the required amount of time. So we need to do something to reform that as well, to bring it back, especially if these people aren't in jail because they're all out with no bail. Well, then what's the rush of having to get the information to the defense attorney? I think it's like 15 days. What you can do is say that as long as the information and all of the information gets to the defense attorneys, say 2 weeks prior to trial, however long that might be, it might be they're not going to trial for 6 months or 8 months. So as long as it's 4 weeks or 2 weeks or whatever is appropriate, as long as the information gets to the defense attorneys with enough time for the defense attorneys to mount a case and look at all the evidence, then, you know, we could change it to do that, right? And this is just a common sense little tweak that I think is very, very reasonable. But, you know, again, the WFP and the DSA senators and assembly members up in Albany, they don't want to hear any of it. You know, I spent the majority of my career in plainclothes enforcing quality of life violations in the subway from 10 o'clock at night to 7 in the morning. You know, and these quality of life violations, fare evasion, smoking, littering, drinking, they were really tools to get us to go after individuals who are committing more serious crime or who had been wanted for committing more serious crime, right? So I rode the train down from the City Hall up to 125th Street on the 6 train, and we were looking for people who victimize sleeping passengers, right? They cut their pockets, they take their watches while they're sleeping, maybe they're a little intox, and that's their job, right? And during the day, it's a little bit different. During the day, we have pickpockets and bag openers that they victimize commuters, and our plainclothes cops during the day, they're looking for those individuals while we're looking for the people who victimize sleeping passengers at night. And, you know, when the city council decriminalized a whole host of these minor violations, like littering and smoking and drinking, they took these tools away from us, right? And then they did the same thing. The district attorneys have failed to prosecute crimes like resisting arrest or fare evasion. And by taking away these tools, you really are making the city and the subway less safe, right? Because I see somebody walking up and down the train car, and maybe they're smoking a cigarette, maybe they're drinking a beer, or maybe they're even just littering. And now I've seen them up and down. I've seen them maybe twice on the downtown side, on the northbound side. And I'm like, well, what the heck is he doing, right? He's not going to work. You know why he's not going to work? Because he's at work. His work is finding victims. And now I see him do a minor violation. I get his ID, I run his name, and I see, oh, the man's got like 5 different arrests for grand larceny, for picking someone's pocket, for assault, for a whole host of things. And now, because it's a criminal in nature for whatever he did, say, like call it smoking or littering, I could bring him in for that. And what I've done now is I'm taking him out of the system. I've gotten into his head. I've ruined his evening, and I've prevented somebody from becoming a victim. And you might say that, well, it's not really much of a crime. It's just a wallet or a watch. We don't want to put somebody in jail and really stigmatize them because of that. Well, that's just nonsense, to be honest with you, because all of these minor things have a cumulative impact, a cumulative effect on the citizen's psyche, right? When people get victimized in the subway, they feel like it's unsafe, and they tell someone, and you get the sense of disorder in the subway, and it's already a claustrophobic environment, and by addressing these things and preventing somebody from getting victimized, we make the subways feel safer, because they are safer, and people feel that they can get from point A to point B, and that improves our economy, that improves tourism, that improves kids going to and from school, because the subways are not the lifeblood. People are the lifeblood of New York City. The subways are our veins and our arteries, and without them being safe, the city itself is harmed. So that's the reasoning behind it. And me, Vito, I was with my cops and my sergeants every step of the way. I wasn't afraid to put my hands on people. I wasn't afraid to make arrests. I wasn't afraid to challenge people, because it was the right thing to do to keep the city safe. And I also wasn't afraid to speak out and not do something when I felt that it wasn't 100% appropriate. Look, I just spoke about two of probably a dozen or more different items that we could have spoken about, but I want to circle back to about four senators, two in Queens, two in Brooklyn: Andrew Gennardis, Iwan Chu, Toby Stavisky, and John Liu. They are senators in purplish districts. They claim that they're moderates, but they will not deviate from the party line of the far left Working Family Party or Democratic Socialists of America. Legislators who are just telling them what to do and not allowing them to make any reasonable amendments to any of these laws. I mean, I get why some of these laws were put into place. I get that people want fairness along with safety, and we can do that. We can do that as a city, as a state. The police department can do it. We just have to pivot on how we address things. And I also know how hard it is to stand up to bureaucracy. And let me tell you something let me tell you a story going back probably during the Bloomberg era, actually, when stop and frisk were a big thing. And, you know, stop and frisk, they became an enforcement tool, and they became a panacea for bringing crime down. This was like the greatest tool in the world. And I didn't necessarily buy it. What happened is that I think we, as a police department, maybe we conducted, I don't know, I'm going to just say 50,000 stop, question, and frisks, right? And then crime went down by 50%. Well, then the people in the police department saw that, and they made the, I think, incorrect assumption that the more stop and frisks you do, the more you'll drive down crime, right? So 50,000 brought crime down by 50%. And again, I'm just making these numbers up to illustrate my point. If we do 100,000, we'll bring it down by 70%. If we do 200,000, we'll bring it down by 90%. Well, that didn't happen, right? Because it's the case of diminishing returns, right? What happened was we did all of these extra stop and frisks, and we were stopping and frisking the same people again and again and again. These were people that really didn't do anything wrong, and these were people that in the black and brown communities, and they had a right to be upset, right? And I would have this discussion with my bosses, because I would have months when I had no felonies on the first platoon in the subway at 14th Street Union Square. No felonies in the last 28-day period, right? I had a few misdemeanors, 4 or 5, and I maybe had 35 stop and frisks. When I say me, I meant, the cops and the sergeants who worked under me. And they would bust my chops saying, "Oh, you only got 30 stop and frisks." Well, I got 3 crimes. I got 3 misdemeanor crimes. A stop and frisk is supposed to be conducted when you observe somebody committing or about to commit a crime, which is a misdemeanor or a felony in a public place, right? If I only have a handful of misdemeanors, how am I stopping all of these people? What crime are they committing when I don't have crime? I don't have the corresponding crime, right? And what does doing all of these stop and frisks, what does it accomplish besides pissing people off, right? Nothing. It doesn't accomplish anything. What if it was your child? What if it was your child coming back from school or from a sports club or just hanging out with his friends, and 2 times a week he gets approached by the cops, and they stop and they frisk them because he's in a high crime area or she's in a high crime area? Yeah, they have a right to be upset. And I made this argument to my bosses, knowing that if you say anything against the party thinking to your boss in a bureaucracy like the police department or like the Department of Education, what happens is there's a real cost to doing that. Okay, the potential of loss of overtime, loss of, I don't know, denying days off, moving your hours around, changing your days off. You know, all of these things are very real risks you take when you try to bump up against a system because you don't think something is right. Here's the thing. I did that. Okay? I stood up because I thought something was wrong. And none of the four individuals I spoke about, Andrew Gennardis, Iwan Chu, Toby Stavisky, or John Liu, would ever stand up against the working family parties or the far left wing of the Democrat parties, even to try to get common sense amendments through that could be both fair for the community and keep New Yorkers safe. I'm Vito LaBella. Thank you for listening.